1863. Egypt stands on the edge of transformation. Khedive Ismail Pasha ascends to power with grand ambitions. 7 million people live under his rule. Cairo prepares to become the Paris of the Middle East. The Suez Canal will soon connect two oceans. Cotton exports boom during the American Civil War. European bankers line up to offer loans. And within 13 years, Egypt will have surrendered its finances to foreign control, sold its most valuable asset for a fraction of its worth, lost its ruler to forced abdication, and handed its sovereignty to European creditors who demand 80% of the nation's revenue to service debt. This isn't colonial conquest. This isn't military invasion. This is something more insidious. This is financial colonization. This is what happens when European bankers discover they can control a country not with soldiers, but with compound interest. When a ruler's ambitions collide with predatory lending. When modernization becomes the trap that destroys independence. I'm not here to moralize about debt. I'm here to examine how a kingdom that ruled for millennia, that built the pyramids and controlled the Nile, managed to bankrupt itself and lose its sovereignty through a decade of catastrophic borrowing. This is the story of how Egypt's debt didn't just impoverish the country, it sold it. The dream that cost everything. 1863. Ismail Pasha becomes Khedive of Egypt. He's 33 years old. He studied at the French Military Academy at Saint-Cyr. He speaks fluent French. He dreams of making Egypt European. Not metaphorically, literally. His famous declaration, "My country is no longer part of Africa. We are now a part of Europe." He builds grand boulevards in Cairo, opera houses, palaces, schools, railways connecting Cairo to Alexandria and Aswan, telegraph lines, irrigation canals, sugar refineries, port facilities at Alexandria. He tears down medieval Cairo and replaces it with Parisian-style streets. He hosts the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 with the most extravagant celebration the world has ever seen. 600 guests. European royalty, especially commissioned opera by Verdi. It looks magnificent. It's financed entirely with foreign debt, and the terms are poisonous. The numbers tell the horror story. In 1863, Egypt's debt stands at £3 million. By 1876, it reaches £100 million. In 13 years, the debt multiplies 33 times. But here's the truly devastating part. Egypt doesn't receive most of the money it borrows. The mechanism is simple and brutal. European bankers issue bonds at face value, but sell them at massive discounts. They pocket the difference. Then Egypt must repay the full face value, with interest. The loans that devoured. A kingdom. Let's examine the mathematics of financial predation. 1862. The first major loan. European bankers issue bonds with nominal value of £3.3 million. They sell them at 83% of face value. Egypt receives £2.5 million before banker fees. But Egypt must repay nearly £8 million over 30 years. That's 3 times what they received. Real interest rate, 11% annually. 1866. Railway loan from Fruling and Gushen. Nominal value, £3 million. Egypt receives $2.64 million. To secure the loan, existing railways must be mortgaged. Interest rate, 7% nominal, much higher. Effective rate after discounts, 1867. The Imperial Ottoman Bank offers a private loan. Nominal value, £2.08 million. Egypt receives $1.7 million. Purpose, buying land for sugar plantations. More assets pledged as collateral. 1868, the Oppenheim loan. This one's catastrophic. Nominal value, £11.89 million. Egypt receives $7.19 million in cash, less than 61% of the nominal value. The rest vanishes into banker commissions and discounts. 1870, another private loan from Bischofsheim and Goldschmidt. Nominal value, £7.143 million. Egypt receives $5 million, 30% lost immediately. 1873, the loan that breaks everything. Nominal value, £32 million. Sold at 70% of face value, Egypt receives approximately £20 million. $9 million comes as depreciated treasury bonds, not cash. Amount to be repaid over 30 years, £77 million. Real interest rate, 11% plus principal depreciation. Add it all together. By 1876, Egypt has borrowed a nominal £94 million, including floating debt. The country actually received less than $68 million. They must repay amounts that exceed $300 million with interest. The Egyptian economy can't support this. Nobody's economy could support this. The loans aren't designed to be repaid. They're designed to transfer control. The contractors who looted a country. The money doesn't just disappear into interest payments. European contractors systematically overcharge for every project. Railways? Egypt pays 325 million francs. Actual construction cost, 75 million francs. The contractors pocket 250 million. That's 4 times the real cost. Port of Alexandria. Egypt pays £2.5 million to a European firm. Real cost? £1.5 million. £1 million vanishes. The irrigation canals. Egypt spends £46 million on modernization. Much of it goes to European companies charging inflated prices. The Khedive can't negotiate. He doesn't know the true costs. The European advisors work for the contractors. And here's the cruelest part. Egypt needs these projects. The irrigation improvements increase agricultural productivity. The railways connect markets. The ports facilitate trade. The infrastructure works. But Egypt pays so much that the benefits get consumed by debt service before they can transform the economy. The cotton boom masks the problem temporarily. During the American Civil War from 1861 to 1865, Southern cotton exports collapse. Global prices surge. Egypt's cotton exports become enormously profitable. The government borrows more, confident that cotton revenues will cover everything. Then the Civil War ends. American cotton floods the market. Prices collapse. Egypt's revenue model disintegrates, and the loans come due. The taxes that crushed a nation, the government needs revenue. Desperately. Tax rates increase fourfold. Land tax rises from 40 piastres per fadan in the early 1860s to 160 piastres by 1875. Budget income grows from £2 million in 1861 to £10.5 million in 1875. But 80% goes to debt service. 80%? The government collects taxes and immediately transfers them to European creditors. There's nothing left for administration, schools, or defense. Ismail tries something desperate. In 1871, he introduces the Mukabala law. Landowners can pay 6 years of land tax in advance. In exchange, they receive 50% reduction on that land forever. Later, he extends the payment period to 12 years with an 8.5% discount per installment. Wealthy landowners jump at the opportunity. They raise £15.7 million between 1873 and 1878. The government gets immediate cash, but it sacrifices £2.5 million of annual revenue starting in 1885. Forever. It's mortgaging the future to survive the present. And the future arrives faster than anyone expects. The asset sale. That surrendered sovereignty. November 1875. Egypt cannot make its debt payments. The treasury is empty. Creditors demand payment. Ismail owns one asset that's genuinely valuable, 176,602 shares in the Suez Canal Company, nearly 44% of the company's total capital. The canal generates revenue. More importantly, it's strategically vital to British interests. Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli moves quickly. He contacts the Rothschild banking house. Within days, Britain purchases all of Egypt's Suez shares for £4,759,000. Egypt gets temporary relief from creditors. Britain gains control of the most important waterway connecting Europe to Asia. The sale is a disaster for Egypt. The shares pay 15% of the canal's annual net profits. That's permanent revenue. Gone. Moreover, Egypt still must pay the buyer 5% annual interest on the purchase price dash approximately 100 million francs. The country sold its most valuable asset and still owes interest on the sale price. Britain becomes a direct creditor. More importantly, Britain now has a stake in Egypt's stability. British financial interests and British strategic interests align. The road to occupation becomes inevitable. The control that erased independence. January 1876. Egypt needs cash desperately. European bankers offer short-term advances from the Anglo-Egyptian Bank and Credit Foncier at 14% annual interest for 3 months, 14% for 90 days. As collateral, Ismail pledges his 15% share of Suez Canal fees, revenues from Alexandria, and port rights. The interest rates are usurious, but Ismail has no choice. He borrows. He cannot repay. The situation spirals. April 1876. Egypt suspends debt payments. Default. Other countries default simultaneously dash the Ottoman Empire, Peru, Uruguay. The banking crisis that erupted in New York, Frankfurt, Berlin, and Vienna in 1873 has strangled credit markets. But Egypt's creditors won't accept default. May 1876. Under intense pressure, Ismail agrees to the creation of the Caisse de la Dette Publique, the Commission of the Public Debt. Representatives from France, Britain, Austria, Hungary, and Italy sit on the commission. They control Egypt's revenue. They determine which debts get paid. They decide what the government can spend. The commission immediately claims the most productive revenue streams: land taxes, salt monopolies, tobacco duties, railway income. By 1877, over 60% of all Egyptian revenue goes directly to the commission. The Egyptian government gets what's left. 1878. The European powers demand more. An international commission of inquiry examines every source of revenue and expenditure. Their recommendation? Install European ministers directly into the Egyptian cabinet. August 1878. Ismail appoints a European cabinet under pressure. A British subject becomes finance minister. A Frenchman takes public works. European controllers oversee every ministry. This is the dual control. Two European powers jointly supervising Egyptian finances. Egypt technically remains independent, but the government answers to foreign ministers who answer to foreign governments who answer to foreign bondholders. The austerity is savage. Government salaries cut. Army reduced from 120,000 troops in 1874 to 12,000 by 1879. Officers placed on half pay. Public works delayed. Every decision prioritizes debt repayment over domestic needs. The ruler who tried to resist. The Egyptian people notice. Their taxes increase. Their government serves foreigners. Their Khedive appears powerless. Resentment builds. Ismail realizes he's lost control. In early 1879, he attempts to fight back. The Assembly of Delegates, Egypt's consultative council, demands more authority over finances. They want European ministers accountable to the Assembly. Egyptian army officers protest the austerity measures. They march on the Ministry of Finance and occupy it. Ismail sees his opportunity. He sides with the protesters. He dismisses the European cabinet in April 1879. He orders the Assembly to dissolve. They refuse. They claim they represent the nation and won't surrender to foreign pressure. Ismail backs them. Britain and France have seen enough. They cannot allow Egypt to escape debt obligations. They cannot permit Ismail to remain in power. They pressure the Ottoman Sultan technically Ismail's overlord to remove him. June 26, 1879. A telegram arrives from Constantinople addressed to the ex-Khedive Ismail. The Ottoman Sultan, acting under British and French pressure, has deposed him. His son Tufik becomes Khedive. Ismail goes into exile in Naples, then Istanbul. He dies there in 1895, never returning to Egypt. Tufik is pliable. He reinstates European control immediately. The dual control returns. In July 1880, the law of liquidation passes. It limits Egypt to 50% of total revenues. The other 50% goes to the Caisse de la Dette Publique. Egypt is no longer governed by Egyptians for Egyptian interests. It's administered by Europeans for European creditors. The rebellion that triggered occupation. The Egyptians haven't finished resisting. A nationalist movement emerges, led by Colonel Ahmed Urabi, an Egyptian officer from peasant background. The movement demands Egypt for the Egyptians. They want to end European financial control. They want native Egyptians in government and military leadership. They want constitutional limits on autocratic power. By 1881, the National Party allies, army officers with members of the Assembly. They represent genuine popular frustration with foreign domination and Tufik's subservience. The movement grows powerful. Britain grows nervous. The nationalists threaten European control. More importantly, they threaten the Suez Canal. British strategic interests are at stake. France initially supports intervention but backs out at the last moment. July 1882. Britain bombards Alexandria. British troops land. September 1882. At the Battle of Tel El Kebir, British forces crush Urabi's army. Colonel Urabi surrenders. Britain occupies Egypt. The occupation isn't temporary. Evelyn Baring, later Lord Cromer, becomes consul general and de facto ruler of Egypt from 1883 to 1907. He ensures debt payments continue. The Caisse de la Dette Publique remains in control of Egyptian revenues until 1940. Britain claims it will leave once Egypt is stable. It stays for 74 years. The occupation officially ends only in 1956. The price of foreign debt. The numbers reveal the catastrophe. Egypt's external debt rose from £3 million in 1863 to nearly £100 million by 1876. The country actually received approximately $68 million after discounts and fees, but committed to repaying over £300 million with interest and principal. Annual debt service consumed £4.5 million from a budget of £10.5 million, nearly half. After the British occupation, the percentage remains constant. The debt doesn't decline. New consolidation loans replace old debts. Interest payments continue for decades. The human cost is staggering. Peasants pay taxes years in advance. Farmers lose land. Officers lose positions. Students lose schools as education budgets shrink. Infrastructure projects halt. The modernization that justified the borrowing stalls because all revenue goes to creditors. Egypt doesn't develop. It services debt for 70 years. The pattern that repeats Egypt's story isn't unique. Greece faced international financial commissions in the 1840s. Tunisia fell to French financial control in 1869, then became a protectorate in 1881. The Ottoman Empire created its own public debt administration in 1881. European creditors used the same strategy everywhere: lend generously at predatory terms, wait for default, impose international control, extract resources. The loans weren't designed to develop countries. They were designed to extract wealth. The banks made fortunes from commissions and discounts. The contractors made fortunes from inflated prices. The bondholders made fortunes from interest payments. And the borrowing countries lost their sovereignty. Egypt tried to modernize. The intention wasn't wrong. The execution was naive. Ismail believed European bankers would act in good faith. He believed Egypt could grow its way out of debt. He believed modernization would generate sufficient revenue. He was wrong on all counts. European bankers acted in their interests. Egypt couldn't grow fast enough to overcome 11% real interest rates on money it never fully received. And modernization required stability that debt service destroyed. The lesson is brutal. Debt creates dependencies more effective than armies. Foreign control imposed through financial commissions is harder to resist than military occupation. And once a country surrenders its revenue to foreign creditors, independence becomes theoretical. Egypt was sold for debt, piece by piece. First the Suez Canal shares, then control of revenues, then the government itself, then the country. The British didn't conquer Egypt. The creditors delivered it. And Egypt spent 3/4 of a century paying for its own subjugation.